For once, we will allow ourselves to cross European borders and explain something about the rest of the world, just for cultural purposes. Each state in the world has its own aeronautical authority. However, the regulations are not extremely different. First of all, because they must still comply with international standards, ICAO, to enjoy the Chicago Convention air freedoms. You will find out more information about this one in the following tutorials. And then, because not everyone has the know-how in order to draw up a very technical and complex legislation from scratch. In fact, there are 4 macro groups of philosophies in the aeronautical sector of the world. The largest group is the so-called FAA standard, which takes its name from the American Federal Aviation Administration, which is evidently used in the United States, but it is used in many other states, all of Latin America, for example, and Canada. The second group is the EASA group, i.e. the European one, which groups together all the member states of the Union as well as other neighbouring ones that have accepted to participate in this standard. Even in the Arab Emirates, for example, the standard is very similar to the EASA model, despite having their own regulation. Then there are the 2 other worlds, the Chinese and the Russian, of which very little is known, of course. Going back to the licenses, we've already said that a license obtained in any EASA member state is valid on all national territories of these countries. However, if you've obtained a license, let's say for example in the USA, Canada or in Argentina, to fly with European aircraft, you can make a conversion of your title. That being said, with an American license, it is not forbidden to fly in Europe. However, you can only be at the controls of an aircraft registered with American nationality, the so-called November marking, because the first letter from the plate is always the N. So it's not a question of which territory you're flying over, but rather the marking of the aircraft you are flying. Just to clarify, if you are flying an American-marked plane over Europe, the license needs to be American, not European, and vice versa. However, it is obvious that to work in a European company, one will have to have an EASA license because an operator, for example an Italian, can only manage European aircraft. So, if you wanted to get your license in the United States and then convert it to a European license because you thought it would be less expensive, because you have relatives there, or because you wanted to get an experience abroad, remember 2 simple things. The first is that the theoretical exams for professional licenses are not valid in Europe, and therefore you will have to redo them all from the very beginning. The second is that for the practical part, even if there is a discount on the flight training, it's often not as cheap as you'd imagine. Before deciding to go on to obtain a qualification that's not valid in Europe, consider your reasons carefully. If you do it to save money, don't do it, because the conversion will still cost you a lot. If you do it then to stay and work in that state, consider whether residence permits are necessary. If you do it because you've been told that you'll learn more in schools outside Europe, it's absolutely not true. Having said that, if you have considered emigrating temporarily, get certain information about the school where you are going to have your experience. Try not to pay expensive training packages in advance, find out about the certifications they have, go and visit the school before you sign up, and talk to other students who've already been there. In conclusion, we can put a milestone on this question. In Europe, flying costs more than in any other state, not because companies speculate on this sector. On the contrary, the bureaucracy and the cost of organizations is so high that it's not always possible to apply economies of scale to keep the cost of flying hours as low as elsewhere. Look at the organization chart that a flight school must have in our following tutorials dedicated to organizations and compare it to a foreign flight school where one person holds an entire organization on its feet. Perhaps one also wonders what level of safety there can be in such a place. If you have any questions or curiosities, contact us at info@checkbeforeflight.com or refer to the definitions in Wiki Before Flight. Happy landings!